3, 2, 1, live.
Good evening, everyone. This is a call to order for the Bridgeport Board of Education Personnel and Contracts Committee. Today is Tuesday, August 15, 2023. It's 6 p.m., actually 6:02, and we're at Central High School. With us present is committee member, Mr. Traber, board member, Mrs. Apovic, board member, Ms. Perez, board member, Ms. Casimir, board member, Mr. Minahan. And then we have our superintendent, Dr. Levy David. We have our staff member, Ms. Dixon. I think that's Ms. Siegel. Ms. Siegel, I don't know who RM is. RV. Rita? Oh, Ms. Rita, and then we have IT and we have yes. All right. So at this moment, I would like to have, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes for May 30th, 2023?
I move to approve the minutes of May 30th, 2023.
I second it. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. The next meeting minutes for approval is July 6, 2023. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes of July 6, 2023.
Moved by Mr. Traver. I second it. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. That covers our meeting minutes for the last two meetings that we had. The second item on the agenda is update and discussion of recent personnel changes within the district for the 2023-2024 school year. We have Ms. Dixon from HR, and we have the superintendent. So depending on who would like to present on this item. Also, board members.
I'm sorry.
Also, board members, all of the information is in your packet, so feel free to look through the packet if you have any questions. Bye, Ms. Dixon.
Well, first, good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, everyone. It's been a very busy summer for Bridgeport Public Schools. I have not finalized the updated staff movement. As you know, the first one in August is usually very lengthy. I will let you know that we have processed approximately 300 new employees to begin working in the 23-24 school year. Now, these are not just certified staff members such as our teachers, SLPs, guidance counselors. This also includes our cafeteria workers, security guards, custodial workers, and clericals. So it has been a very busy summer so far, and it will continue to be so as we push to the end of the semester, the end of the summer, with school right around the corner. Also, we are currently busy trying to finalize the interview process for a few administrative positions, which I hope to be have presented to the personnel committee within the next couple of weeks. We have a couple of principal positions, classical studies, Dunbar's principal. We have the director of central magnet, as well as a few assistant principal positions, assistant principal at Marin and assistant principal at Battaglia. We also recently posted for two director positions, director of literacy and director of math. Dr. Levy David is, this decision was made, and I'm sure Dr. Levy David could expand on this, but with the focus on the education part, literacy and math, as we know, are very huge components of the education system that travels from the start of school to graduate school. Literacy and math is integrated in every subject we learn, one way or the other. So we are hoping to, we will start those interview process soon. We are finalizing the candidate choices, and we'll begin with the first round of interviews, hopefully next week. Other than that, I don't have any, if there are any specific questions, I will try to answer to the best of my ability.
All right, thank you. What I'll do is I'll turn over to Dr. Levy if you want to respond, and then we'll open it up for committee members and board members. Is there anything else you'd like to add to Ms. Dixon's report?
Ms. Dixon provided a wonderful report. Thank you, Ms. Dixon.
All right, so I will open it up to committee members. Mr. Traber?
I guess the first question I would ask is what's the magic of the July 30th date versus August 1st? Since that seems to offer some.
Oh, yes, July 31st. So the difference between July 31st and August 1st impacts the resignation of certified staff. Under the collective bargaining agreement for teachers or the certified educators, they are allowed to resign up until July 31st. Anyone who resigns from August 1st on to leave to go teach in another district can be held for up to 30 days from the first day of school. So our first day of school is August 20, first day for teachers back is August 21st. That means by contract, we can hold you up to around September 20th, 2023. We can and will release you if the vacancy created is filled sooner. We do have the authority or decision power if a principal feels that it is not in the best interest of the school to hold a candidate, then we will not hold a candidate. So August 1st is the magic, I don't want to say magic, but that's the date that can prevent a certified staff member from leaving prior to 30 days after the start of school.
I have a follow-up question. How often do you enforce that 30-day?
I have been enforcing that since I've been director of human resources for a little over 3 years.
With no exceptions?
I'm not saying there are no exceptions. There are occasions where a principal has asked to not hold a candidate, an employee. If someone is obviously moving out of state, we're not going to hold them. If someone has medical reasons or personal reasons why they're resigning, we do not hold them.
So can you give me some sense of how often those exceptions are granted?
Give you some sense how they're granted?
Allow those exceptions to be granted.
Well, the contract requires us to hold you if you are going to be employed within another school district. Obviously, we're not going to make, if someone's leaving the state, I believe it's a school district within Connecticut. So if someone is relocating to New York, we are not going to we cannot hold them to 30 days. We can, if someone is leaving the teaching profession altogether, the contract does not allow us to hold them for 30 days.
Is your question?
Not completely, but I don't think I'm going to get a clear answer.
I can weigh in on that as well. Superintendent would like to weigh in. Do you want to pass this?
Of course.
Yeah, there are also instances where individuals resign due to health reasons, pregnancy, bereavement, and also military service. And so those are instances where we would implement those exceptions just out of the need to be very sensitive to the fact that life-changing events do happen to people.
Yes. I understand that as having been the president of the union, I know there are numerous exceptions granted for a variety of reasons that were worked out between Ms. Alter-Dixon and the UNISTER rep for the CEA. And so that's what I was getting at, is this rule is not so absolute as it was just presented to us. There are numerous humanitarian reasons why it's been allowed, not just the absolutes that you described, but other humanitarian reasons. And so I just wanted to sort of be clear that those exist too.
Right. The contract states, though, right. The contract says we can hold you for 30 days if you are taking a position in another district within Connecticut. So that's the rule we follow. If someone is saying that they are leaving because of health reasons or some of the more personal and sensitive reasons, then we cannot hold them. If they're leaving the state, we cannot hold them. nor would we try under certain circumstances.
Yes, I guess what I'm saying, Ms. Alderson, is in my experience in dealing with HR on this issue, there have been numerous exceptions made for lots of reasons. I'm not questioning the reasons. It's just not so absolute as it's being laid out to us, is my point. So I would leave it at that.
Okay.
I'll open it up for members of the board. Mrs. Sullivan. First, let the record reflect Ms. Baptiste Perez is present with us.
Yes, a couple of questions. Follow up on something Mr. Trigger was asking. The contract, is a provision in the contract for the 30 days. What's the ramification if it's violated?
What is the ramification? It depends on what actions are taken by the employee. Obviously, if an employee is still on our payroll, they cannot be working in another district and receive pay from another district. Usually sometimes there are communications between the different HR departments about releasing someone or what's going on. If we have concern that the person is working in the other district sooner, then we might reach out to the other district about it. So yes, you can pursue something legally, but it has not been done yet. It is the cost to pursue it may far outweigh releasing the person.
Thank you. I got a couple other questions about the organizational chart. I see the deputy superintendent position is vacant. Are we planning on filling that position again, or is it going to remain vacant?
I'm sorry, Mr. Sokolovic, can you repeat that?
The deputy superintendent position, is that going to remain vacant, or are we going to search for a new deputy superintendent?
We are going to commence a search for a new deputy superintendent. I have reached out to CES again, who assisted us in the previous search. They had the resources and the experience in conducting these searches. So I have reached out to Mr. Dumas from CES. He was on vacation. I have not heard a formal response from him yet, but I did reach out to them to commence this search for us.
And now all right, let's get ahead of this one right now. It's just going to be a contract that's going to have to come before the board due to the cost of it. Because as we know, all contracts over $25,000 do have to come to the board. And I'm not sure about the deputy superintendent search process. I'd have to look at that a little more, but.
Are you asking if the contract to use CES will come before the board?
Well, we've got to send out anything over one and anything over, it's like I forget the exact numbers. It's got to go through the purchasing ordinances, like over X amount of dollars, and it requires three qualified cost amounts, and search firms are not a unique service, so.
Right. Any process we take, we will follow the requirements set forth by the Board of Education as well as the City Finance Department.
Thank you. And as far as the literacy and the mathematics position, language arts and mathematics positions, these new positions, are they going to be sustainable within our budget? I think that might be a Ms. Siegel question.
Hey, good evening. So the new positions, Director of Literacy and Director of Math, will be funded in the ARP ESSA grant in the first year, 2023-24. Going forward, we will explore the possible application of Title I funding, as well as funding in other grants. So I am foreseeing a split funding arrangement for those positions. in subsequent years after the expiration of the ESSER grant.
So after the ESSER grant expires, we don't really have a secure possible funding. When the fiscal cliff arrives and we deal with all the operating budget deficits.
Well, these positions are high priority positions within the organization. And we anticipate that they will be sustainable, and funding will be identified to sustain those positions. As I indicated, my plan would be to fund them through a combination of operating resources, Title I, and potentially other grants. There may be other changes in the organization that the superintendent implements that will produce a net savings. And those savings could also be applied. But we have every intention of sustaining those positions because they are viewed as high priority positions within the organization, essential to the success of the district.
Yeah, I don't disagree about the essential positions, but as you know, we've cut several important positions in our last round of budget cuts, and I'm just concerned that we're going to add jobs that we just have to take away later when we're balancing, say, paraprofessional psychologists or other positions which are also essential. There's almost no position that we have in this district right now that's not essential. So I just don't want to set us up to take something and then get rid of it again later on. And that's just my concern. And I know we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, and it will be any budget cuts and everything, and approved or disapproved will be a decision jointly made between the board and the superintendent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Perez, any questions, comments? Ms. Casimir, any questions or comments?
So far.
Mr. Benahan, any questions or comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you.
Another-
I have a question now. I heard you in the beginning. When you say about the interview and the hiring process for the new people who work, the staff work for the Bridgeport School, are you the only one that do the process to, interview the people, or your 8 people you have in your department help you with that? And why did it take so long, in the summer? You say you're not finished yet to the process and hiring more staff for Bridgeport School.
You're muted, Ms. Dixon. Here you go.
Sorry about that. All right, Mr. Benha, to answer the first part of your question, no, I am not the only person who conducts the interviews. If I cannot personally sit in on interviews, I do have some type of executive or an administrator or someone from my office that sits in on the interviews. The interviews of this nature or this level they're made up of the committees. Usually, we make every effort to follow the policies and procedures set forth by the Board of Ed under the Board of Ed policies. During the summer, we do run into the problem where having teachers or PAC members, SGC members, dealing with just time and scheduling. But for whenever we have someone in the administrative position, we do have a committee of members it usually is an executive director. We do ask some of the department heads of the specialized services, SLPs, or social workers, guidance counselors. We do have other principals or assistant principals partaking in the interviews. And then we do usually ask to have staff members, teachers, or other certified educators sit in on the interviews as well. So each step is a committee of interviewers. It's not just one person, and then the size of the committee would vary on availability. So as far as why things are taking longer, as you know, unfortunately, the resignations or promotions or changes it's always going on. We had some recent resignations in the administrative position. We also, our recent promotions involved in internal promotions of 2 assistant principals to two principal positions. We had a principal who was promoted to the director of early childhood. So it's a trickle down. When we have the promotion, an internal promotion, then we have to go and fill in the next positions. We had when Dr. Levy David was voted in as superintendent, then we had to go back, do the reverse move, as anyone who was acting in interim had to return to their previous position or a previous position in the same area. So to go back and try to fill those, and if there were any changes, Dr. Levy David had made some reassignments within her authority as the superintendent. So recently there have been shifts, and we are filling them or doing the process as quickly as possible. Being in the summer, and especially in July, as you know, many of the administrators are trying to get their vacations in before the mad rush for August, when the schools reopen and everyone's back. So it is very hard to accommodate or organize everyone's schedules in August to have a full panel or a diversified enough panel to do interviews.
Thank you. And also, you say something very important. Be sure and for the record, because I know it's the policy. When you're trying to do interview for principal and assistant principal, it's good to have SGC. It's good to have community leaders and the PAC or PDSO, because I know for the last one it was something a mistake, and I'll speak with the PAC and PDSO of the schools. It was not informed, and they was never taught them to be part of the interview. So I just want to be sure for the next time we have an interview or something like that, all these 3 organizations, people, they need to be there. It's part of the community, please.
We have been making attempts, and unfortunately, we had a hard time with Harding due to unavailability of one of the member who, with her schedule, she could not attend. But we do try to make every effort we can. It is important. I agree with you, Mr. Benahan, that we have these members represented as they have a vested interest in the schools. We do try, if we cannot get, let's say, an SGC or PAC member, then we ask the principals, and let's see if there's a parent who's willing to sit in on these interviews. If that's not possible, then we definitely, in addition to, in general, we want to have staff members. We were very fortunate enough to have some teachers and guidance counselors who were willing to come in over the summer when they are off to sit in on some of our interview process.
Any more questions, Madam Chair?
Ms. Baptiste Perez?
No questions at this time.
And then the reason why I agree with all that board members have shared, I think it was very important. It's the reason why we add this is because as the positions are changing within the district, it's good for parents and staff members or those that are not in those meetings to know what those transitions are. Obviously, once they have been, communicated to the board, making sure that they're aware of those positions. So I'm glad that that's there. Down again, Mr.
Yes, yeah, that's something you were saying. I just realized that it seems like some of our policies could be limiting you during the summertime. Is there anything policy-wise we as a board could do to make it easier in the summer? Because I know it's hard enough for the Bridgeport Board of Education to draw talent to the schools. So I think it might be good to look at the policies in conjunction with the state statutes and our requirements to try to ease some of the burden while still leaving that level of oversight. If there's anything we could do for that, and with any policies in general, anybody, if they're standing in the way of progress, if you bring it to the board, we could look at them and try to change them to help out.
Excuse me. I will look at the policies. I will speak to my team as well, and I would be more than welcome to sit down and discuss if there are any policies that we might think could, during the summer months, recognizing everyone's schedules, to either revise, revamp, or whatever is necessary. I definitely do believe that the constant communication is important between the administration and the Board of Ed and the community. And these meetings, especially continuing them to be live streamed is important and very helpful. So I am open to further discussions once it calms down a little bit and I have the time to really look and analyze the different policies, to reach out and schedule a meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Traver?
Yeah, these are all these openings are posted on the school district website, correct?
On CT Reap, yes. I mean, Apple-Track, yes.
So anybody in the public can go see what's open in Bridgeport.
Yes, you could click on the Connecticut Apple-Track website for the Board of Ed, and you can look at what positions are open.
So in answer to Mr. Benahan's questions, as well as for the rest of our sake, that's just generally out there in the public domain that people can see what schools have what openings, and subject to the restrictions of the collective bargaining agreements. And then what Mr. Sokolovic was just asking about board policies on how that application process is going to work. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, if there's no further questions on, Mr. Benahan?
Yes, Madam Chair. It Jason, how long the positions be in the website, for how long they leave it there so people they can see it?
So they're full.
Yeah, okay, but yeah, sometime they,
Like a 30-day, 60-day?
yeah.
It depends. Okay. Some jobs may be posted for a short period of time where they will remain posted for 5 to 10 business days. Some usually they remain posted until they're filled.
I asked you.
So that varies.
I asked you because I know it's a position was posted and for one day and then removed the next day. I don't know if you know about that. I will email you the post, but I was very strange. They posted one day, the next day it was out. So that's what I.
Right.
Along.
Definitely let me know what it is. It could have been many reasons. It could have been that we had to revise the posting because it was incorrect. It could be that the position, that it was determined that we weren't going to fill that position, so we had to pull it back. But usually they're open until they're filled.
Okay, because they never put it back, and I know they take it out because they really put somebody there until, I feel that with position is supposed to be in the website for a few days, whatever they have to be. And then if you don't find somebody, or maybe you try for somebody from that, for that department, it's okay. But it was very strange. They take it out one day and it was gone. That's what I asked you.
Right. If you said, I would be able to give you more detailed response if more details as to what job position it was.
I will email you in a few minutes the position.
Okay.
When you said sometimes they're 5 or 10 days, why would it be? I mean, I understand what you just said in answer to Mr. Benahan's question, why a job might come down quickly for the variety of reasons you laid out. But you sort of initially said a position might sometimes only be posted 5 to 10 days, like that was
Correct.
normal. Why would that be?
Sometimes when a position we are in need of moving quicker, we will post a position for a specified amount of days so we can move and start the process. So contracts usually require us to post them, I believe, for 5 school days. I think most of the contracts, 5 to 10 school days. So we make sure that by posting it, we're abiding by the contracts. Again, it's usually when we really need to move on posting this, and that's why we might just say, okay, we're going to limit it to this amount of days.
To Mr. Traver's question, is there do we do internal first and then it's, because some jobs will do an internal posting and then they'll open it up to the public. Could that be to either Mr. Benahan's or Mr. Traver's question? Because I'm curious to know if our staff get first dibs on it before we open it into the community.
Absolutely.
Again, that depends on the job and the union. For example, AFSCME, which is usually our clerical staff and a few of our custodial staff, our paraprofessionals, TSFs, those are internal positions first. Anyone who has the qualifications is entitled to that position. It would have to go to the most senior within that union. Qualified. They have to meet the qualifications. If after there are no qualified internal candidates, then it would be open to the public.
Are you suggesting that's not true of the certified unions?
The only time that an internal position is for certified, for example, we have teacher leaders and we have in-school peer support. Those are limited to internal candidates. They are not open to external candidates.
I'm asking the question that I thought Ms. Brown asked. If a counselor position opens up in the school that a teacher in a different school wants to apply for, that goes to the internal candidate before you hire somebody from the outside, doesn't it? Unless that teacher is substantially
No.
more qualified.
No. What your policy requires is that internal candidate to meet the qualifications should get interviewed. It does not mean that internal candidates automatically get the job. So certified positions are not internal, exclusive to internal candidates, unless they're the school-based in-school peer support and the teacher leader positions. Those are internal because they are teachers who take on additional responsibilities and are paid through a stipend.
Okay. If there's no further questions or comments on this item, we'll move to the next one. Mrs. Kolovich kind of talked a little bit about it, but this is just a visual representation that we started doing to get the board up to date on what visually it looks like for positions to be moved around. So I'll just ask if board members have any questions about this representation of the 2023-24 organizational chart. Any questions? Is there anything that you may not understand and you want clarification on? All right. Sure, Mr. Sokolovich.
Where are the newly hired directors going to fall on this organizational chart?
I don't have to answer that.
Miss Dr. Levy?
They'll be under Dr. Jenkins.
Both.
Yes, both.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, so that's it for that. Thank you, Ms. Dixon. Yep, or Mr. Trevor.
Point of personal privilege.
Yes, go right ahead.
Tomorrow morning, I'll be attending the funeral services of a long-term member of our staff, Mr. Reggie Seabrook, who was the security guard at Blackham School. He died recently. If anybody has ever been through Blackham School, you know Mr. Seabrook. Mm-hmm. He was the face of Blackham School to so many people, helping teachers, parents, and children at that school in more ways than you can imagine. DJing, security, supplies, counseling, all kinds of things. And Reggie was about to enjoy his retirement when he passed away. So I would like a moment of silence in respect from this board on behalf of Mr. Seabrook and his service to our community and our schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that's it for this. I don't want to say thank you to Ms. Dixon and Ms. Rita for providing the organizational chart representation. I know in the past we were trying to get something going, so we look forward to seeing something like this at any major updates that the district may have. The next item on our agenda is Discussion and presentation concerning the university school IPE proposed contract for special education / expulsion program. This item we wanted to bring to the board with there were questions that wanted to be answered. So I want to make sure that, the board has had an opportunity to review this and share their thoughts and concerns on this. At this moment, I believe Ms. Johnson, I'm not sure if there's anyone else from your team that will be presenting on this item.
Actually, Dr. Levy is going to speak to.
Okay.
So, yes, okay. When I arrived in Bridgeport 2 weeks ago, I was surprised that we had been presented with a new contract for the university school, which has been serving our students for many years in the district. And there were initially some concerns about the contract. And I took the initiative to meet with Mr. Estes, who is the new owner of the university school, prior to engaging in that contract, just to hear and familiarize myself with the services that the organization has been providing over these many years to our students. And after my meeting with him, I felt very secure that our students were in safe hands, and that this is an organization that we should continue to have our students safe and sound with. The students that the university school serves are some of our most vulnerable students in the system. There are students with emotional disturbance and behavioral challenges. And that organization has done a phenomenal job over the past couple of decades here in the city of Bridgeport with a Bridgeport native, Mr. Estes, who has graciously accepted the challenge of leading that organization and continuing the great service that our students have been receiving through the university schools. So after that meeting, I felt very comfortable with moving forward with that contract.
Okay. I will open it up for committee members to share their thoughts and concerns. Mr. Traver?
Okay, so we've been presented with a document. Does it not need to be approved by the board first? That's what I'm asking, I guess. Is this something that we voted on already?
We have not.
Okay. And is this an increase in the amount we paid in the past, or what was the past amount?
This new contract represents an increase in the amount that we have paid to university school in previous years. The amount that the district paid was significantly lower than what competitors with the same services charge for similar services throughout not only Fairfield County, but throughout the state of Connecticut.
And that is.
It's in the
What are we
contract,
going
sir.
from to?
Mhm.
I knew what the new amount is. What was the previous amount?
The previous amount.
Is that from 2023, 24? I mean, 2022, 23 school year.
Yes.
That was a 90, it's like 98 something thousand.
I just want to ask Ms. Siegel to weigh in on what the prior amount was.
Yes, Ms.
Yes, the 2022-23 amount for the university school, the special ed component, was $1 million.
Okay. Any further questions, Mr. Traver?
No, not right now.
I'll open up for committee members, Mrs. Kolovec.
Okay. Again, this is problematic on several levels. In the past, we've had a culture and climate where contracts have not been coming before the Board of Education. And I believe the 22-23 contract never came before the Board of Education. And the reason I say so is because I remember a threefold increase in the contract for us. This contract it was signed by former Superintendent Testani. And the reason why these product policies and protocols are in place is to ensure the Bridgeport Public Schools are getting the best value for their money. That year was 40 students, was 40 divided by 2 million somebody. So 50,000, about 50,000? Divided by 50.
Ms. Sokolovic, if I may, there are multiple special ed agreements that are entered into every year. This is considered an out-of-district placement. It's not out of the Bridgeport geographical area because the university school is located in Bridgeport. However, it's considered an out-of-district placement. And there are many agreements. There may be 30 to 50 agreements or more per year. It was established many years ago that those agreements are not presented to the board because they relate to mandated services and it's critical to process those agreements expeditiously.
Any contract over $25,000 through board policy must come before the board. So it's been special education services before. It's come before the board before. We've approved this contract before in the amount of $235,000 in the 21-22 school year, and in the 19-20 school year, and in the 20-21 school year. That has come before the board. And it's very important. I'm trying to understand this threefold increase that did not come before the board. And I don't even know how many students we service at the university school because I'm not sure we even had 20 expulsions in the 19-20, 21, 22 school year. So I'm trying to see how the value of this contract is. I can't even ask these questions because this contract as well is already signed. We've been pretty clear with staff going forward since after the pandemic that we need to get back into the process of us overseeing these contracts as per policy. Policy was loosened up and put to the side during COVID. Yes, COVID is over. The board needs to see each and every contract before it's entered into. And I'd like to know how many, in the last couple of years, how many students have been expelled and serviced by this contract. Does anybody have an estimate?
Well, I can't speak to, she's raising her hand, while I can't speak to the total number of expulsions, I do want the board to understand it is twofold. The school also provides, I think we reserve up to 40 seats. In the last roster that I looked at, had about 34 students that I think would be continuing on in the upcoming school year. Those are students, if you look at the continuum of services that haven't been successful in our comprehensive high schools and or self-contained programs that attend that school as an alternative just for their education. The expulsion piece is in addition to that. And that number fluctuates, but I think she can.
I'm just speaking for.
If you could just state your name on the
Yes.
record and come closer so that.
Yeah, just.
My name is Margaret Zellwein.
Yeah, you
Just have to get close enough to
bring
the
your
mic.
chair up. Okay.
I've been principal of the university for over 39 years.
Oh, wow. Joe.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
And so the university school has two programs, has had historically, well, we've had several programs.
Point of
for the
order.
last 7
Yes.
years.
I didn't have your name, who she is, and it's reflected into the records.
Yes, please state your name and just loudly so that he can
Consider at the further end of the table.
My name is Margaret Zellwein. I'm the principal of the university school. The university school was owned, a private school owned by Nicholas Mako since 1974. Mr. Mako's turning 90 this year. And he entered into an agreement with Mr. Steves, who is here, who has just purchased the school recently, this in the last month. I'm still the principal at this point. So I can speak for the past, for example, last school year and the year before. We had a program. Our first program, a special education program. These are 40 students. And the contract for that was less than $1 million last year. Okay. I don't have the figures in front of me. I'm sure that the Siegel does. I believe it's 23,900 per student, but Bridgeport purchases as a contract those seats. So if a student leaves, another one can fill it. So at any time, we usually have between 30 and 40 students, more as the year progresses. The expulsion program is a completely different program. That program is a 4-hour program. The students may or may not have an IEP. And the students may be sent to us they're sent to us for the amount of time that the expulsion is enforced. So it could be a marking period, it could be a half a year, it could be no more than a school year. We have 30 seats that were purchased, and that was the 235,000. So that was 7,500 students. Some of the students did stay a year. This past year exactly, I'm trying to remember, I want to say we had about 60 students. Year before, we had 72, but some of the students there for 2 weeks. They may be expelled for bringing pot into the school or something, and we don't make the decision, of course, there's a hearing. Some of the students are there for more extensive reasons. So the contracts that you're speaking of aren't really interchangeable. They're two separate contracts. And if all the seats are filled at one time, there's 70 students. So 40 for the special education students and 30 for the expulsion students.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mrs. Cole.
Yeah, so to follow up, this contract in front of us today for $450,000, just for expulsion students.
Correct.
And 2000, let's go past the $1 million contract. The 2021-22 contract was also just for expulsion students that $235,000.
That's correct.
So in 2 years, we got an escalation of about 92% in costs.
Exactly. I can speak to all of it.
Please state your name for the record.
I'm John Steves. I'm the director of multiple programs for kids with disabilities throughout the state of Connecticut. I'm also a state DPS provider, Department of Development. I can go into a long picture of that. I was approached by university school in May. They were going out of business. You could not sustain working with these Bridgeport children with the funds they were given. And legally, I went in, I hired attorneys to look at it. They were borrowing money, not being able to pay their teachers at the end of the year based on, so Bridgeport was at some point going to get a letter saying that there will no longer be a university school. Am I correct in that?
Nick Mako was underwriting it, to be honest with you, because he had had it for so long, he really didn't want it to close. And we asked for more money and we didn't get it, so he was gonna have to close it.
But whatever the negotiations were or weren't, to my understanding, I was not part of that negotiation, that even their funding was cut at some time. I have 17 school districts that I provide services for that are $75,000 per student without any other costs. If they need an aid, I present. So to make another long story short, I provided this contract. I asked for the opportunity to speak to the assistant superintendent on July 6th and July 7th. Presented a contract on July 11th. I'm asked to speak. No one contacted me to negotiate, to talk to me about how I was even involved. Mrs. Zoline was never presented or asked, why is John Steves involved? And she can speak for herself, that's why I asked her. She was never contacted about why I got involved, why a university school now. John Steves is in it. No contact about it. So the only opportunity I had, and I was told I tried to meet with the interim superintendent 2 times. Was told it was not her responsibility anymore. Well, I didn't have the opportunity to meet with Karen Baldwin, I asked, she had the contract on July 11th. I believe it was the 13th or 14th. I actually went to the Board of Ed. Unfortunately, there was a death in her family. I tried to ensure that, but no one responded. So when I had the opportunity, I believe it was July 28th, to meet with the new superintendent, to go over the contract, tell her what I'm basically telling you, how the scenario went, that there was no university school anymore unless I came into the picture. But I presented her with contracts, a similar contract that I had signed with Mr. Testani in Fairfield, where 20 students in a similar fashion, the first 10 students would be at 75,000. The next 5 students would be at 66,000. The next 5 students would be at 55,000. That's without transportation, because I provide a lot of my own transportation. I have 110 vehicles. I provided her also with a contract from Stanford, where it's 120,000 a student. Remember, this is driven by what's called the individual education plan. That is non-negotiable. It's what the service is that child needs. So being that I knew university school, I actually graduated from the university school in 1983. I knew their program. I fought for that program years ago when Ballas, the superintendent, tried to end that program. That program has saved many students, Bridgeport students, that we don't throw out. It's for something that happens in a school system, whether they bring a gun, they threaten a teacher, something happens where they're out. You have to provide an education. And if it's an IEP, a special ed student, it's non-negotiable. It's what the service is. So I came in and I think the superintendent, the new superintendent, knew I was coming in. That is at the lowest amount for university school to survive. It looks, I know what I got their last 5 tax reports. They made not $1 in 5 years. They took loans, they borrowed. She's right here. They borrowed $90,000 from a teacher last year to make their last payroll. Even when I just bought it, and I bought it with my money, they had to secure a loan to pay their teachers at the end of the year. Am I correct?
Yes, well, Nick was underwriting and then Nick became ill, so he decided.
He is now, he's in a nursing home, he's incapacitated. I would think, and I mean, the last 6 years, I haven't seen him.
So he's been, but he's now at this point, he could no longer do that. And that's really what was going on.
So I came in, I didn't need to do this. I had 4 other schools that run, and I'm also a DDS provider. So a lot of these kids, when they graduate, depending on their IQ, come to me anyways. And I have them for the rest of their lives, as long as I do day group. But I presented, and the superintendent, I gave her the lowest possible amount. And I showed her a signed contract, one from the superintendent that had just left. That at the high end of just tuition was $75,000. I gave Bridgeport the opportunity, without even looking at any of the IEPs, at $55,000 across the board, because this is a no-win situation for anybody other than Bridgeport and the students to be successful. And I think the superintendent will concur about what I showed her at I went across the board, the lowest end. Even the $200,000 contract makes no sense. There was, you're keeping, that contract doesn't reflect in the last 3 years. I will tell you that the rent alone, because I own my buildings. I own all my buildings. That building pays rent. That rent is 15,000 close a month. That's $180,000 just in rent. Yes. And I hired all the staff that were there, like keeping them on board. But some of those people haven't had a raise. Electricity has gone up. Everything runs. Health insurance for the teacher. And they had a decrease in funding a year or two ago, I'm not sure when it was. And Nick was not negotiating anything. The man was putting money, lots of them, out of his pocket. I think it was more because it was his legacy. He built that school. But he hadn't negotiated with the Bridgeport Board of Ed in maybe 10 years. So and I can ask anybody want to ask, that is the low end for that to be sustainable as an opportunity. But I will tell you, as a former graduate, that school saved my life in 1983. It's graduated, and remember, you have 40 IEPs. That those parents want those kids there. So that's, and I'm not saying this to be in any way, you would have to go to every parent and say, I'm taking your kid out of here, but you have to justify it. And you can't justify it as a cost. I came to the table with the lowest amount of any contract that I've ever done. Because I'm also from Bridgeport. I grew up in here. Many awards from the city council. I've done many things. Some of the board members here know the things that I do for kids. I do way above the contract for some kids. I go to court for these kids, and I've made a lot of these kids productive adults in society.
Well, thank you.
So that's.
Yeah, so I just.
just got a little follow-up. Question the integrity of any of the programs, lead the negotiations. To say we got this contract, say the 4th or the 5th of
July 11th, exactly.
July 11th. The contract has expired since July 1st. Why wasn't it brought to beforehand if there was an intent to renew? Why don't we have an extra question?
I thought we were gonna close.
And you thought you were going to close?
Yeah, we approached Mr. Steves because he had said in the past that he was thinking about it. They made the decision.
Right, because it was a path to get this approved in the proper manner as was done in the past, because in 2019, we signed this contract on August 28th. So there was still time to go through the process and not be under the gun. And I think we're great negotiators. What I got a question is how we negotiate on this side if the board's not even aware of the contract coming up and under the gun. It's presented as we don't sign this contract, our kids have nowhere to go.
Yeah, well, they have places to go.
Yeah, they do have places to go. So this contract, and for future reference, I don't know if the rest of the board would agree that we need to oversee every contract as per policy. This is something we've been trying to get our hands around for a long time. And it's not dependent on who the superintendent, who the contract provider is, but it's something as stewards of the Bridgeport taxpayers taking care of their funds in a manner that we have to be on top of it. Because the city has a good reputation. I don't know if you realize the city has a reputation for corruption, backdoor deals. When a 92% increase goes through without board approval, without any oversight, that might lead to questions of why did they get this contract? How did it come through without board approval? So then the process is what I'm questioning. The process right here in this instance is very, very clear.
Before you go, I want to make sure all our board members have had a chance to respond. Ms. Perez, do you have any questions or comments? Ms. Casimir, do you have any questions or comments? Mr. Bennett, do you have any questions or
Yes, I have
comments?
a question, Madam Chair. A question and comment. knowing your program, and I know you do amazing job. And thank you for that. I know you do amazing stuff, and you do amazing for the students, and that you're doing for free because you care. I respect for that. But I got my question.
I can come back.
Come back, please. Come back.
Ms. Baptiste Perez.
July 1st, that would have came under the purview, and this is what I believe, Ms. Brown, that would have come under the purview of Ms. Parent, correct?
Correct.
And Dr. Baldwin, did that information come to you that this was under renewal?
No.
So neither the deputy or the interim at the time communicated that this fundamental service may not be available to our school district and that it was running the risk of closing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't want to go in the world of hypotheticals, but Mr. Steves,
Yes.
do you know on average how much your service would be for any district in the state of Connecticut, so that we can just have an understanding of the numbers?
Like I said, I provided the superintendent with at least 5 of the districts. Fairfield 1, Stanford 1, Derby 1, provided Monroe and Anson. Right out the gate, all of them start out at $75,000 for an individual.
Okay.
Without transportation and without pair of services. That's an extra cost, and that's done by an IAP. Like, I understand this contract, but there's been times where this contract will extend to more than 40 students because you'll expel more than 40 students. This contract affords you that they would stay at that price. I get many referrals during the year, and I'll give you an example. Karen Baldwin gave me a student right at the end of the year in June. The student required special ed services and had to have 2 parents, 2 to 1. That contract was $75,000 plus $35,000 per each parent and separate transportation, individualized transportation, because he couldn't ride in the car with any other students because he attacked people, hits himself without naming the student. That's an example of a contract that is done in June. That student now will be part of that program next year. So those are individualized contracts because it's an individualized education plan. And it doesn't have to be with me. That referral may go out to schools like ACES, Kennedy Center. Parents go there and go, I don't want that. I don't want that. I like the program that I saw at John's program. I send an acceptance letter after I meet the parents. Sometimes I go see the student in the home. I say, this is the only way I can do this to be successful. And then that contract got signed in June, and it was only for extended school year. But now we're having a DPT, I think sometime next week when ESY ends, because he had extended ESY. He got July and August. And then a new contract will be signed individually. But there may be 30 of those. So this is a different kind of, the only other contract that I've ever done like this is the one that I just did with Fairfield. And not only did they do the 75, the 66, and the 55, they also prepaid me $550,000 before I even start that contract. But that's how I wanted it, because it's a new program in one of my new buildings that I bought on Capitol Avenue. And those kids from Fairfield will be having the whole 3rd floor. And they prepaid me, and I show that. This is the lowest end, and this is the only way that I could make this program work and be successful. And provide some things that I think students that go to this school should be getting, because I do a little bit more than what they were doing. I believe kids should be going out into their own community and learning where the Department of Labor is. These kids basically go to school there and stay in the building. And I get it, it's been very successful. I graduated from there. But I'm gonna add to that service so these kids can be productive, not that you're just going to a school because they got thrown out. I don't give up on kids. I try to make them work. So I get the reason that the board, and you're the board, you make the decision. But there are contracts that are negotiated that add up to way more than that. But it's because it's an individual at that time. But if you take the bulk of those individuals, I'll give you an example. I know that I took 10 kids this year out of Hallbrook for Fairfield. They charge $180,000 a kid. So Fairfield just said to me, John, what could you do it for? I said $75,000 a kid, minus the transportation. So there are other ways to do other things. This is a bulk contract, and I get it. But this is cost effective for the city of Bridgeport, believe me. Because without this, many of these kids are either going to quit school. There's a reason that you're not putting them back into their regular high school. You took them out of there for a reason. So, and so that your dropout rate and all that. This is what it is.
Thank you. Ms. Betty Springs.
Okay, I have a question. What is this with July 6th, July 7th, July 11th? Those dates were also mentioned in addition to July 1st.
Those were dates that I tried to talk to. I made the attempt by calling Karen Baldwin's office because I knew that something was going to happen. University School had approached me in May, and I wasn't sure. And being that I got a hold of my lawyer and my accountants, I wanted 5 years of their tax returns, correct?
Yeah.
5 years of their tax returns. I wanted to see all their financial statements, and I got them. And I go, how are you in business? They also were not able to pay their taxes for the last 4 years because of trying to make payroll and things like that. So I did what I had to do. And then when I figured that I could buy it and turn it around, I also, when I knew I was getting close, I made the attempt. And then when I bought it, I broke the contract. But I made many attempts. People know that I was at the board today. That contract was there and handed to the financial office and to, I had to go to Karen Ball. That's who it went to. And I never got a phone call, never said, why are you even involved? And then I assumed that they were going to call Mr. Zoline to say, what's going on? Why is even John involved? That phone call was never, right?
We were waiting, we needed to let Bridgeport know, we were waiting to see if John was gonna buy it, otherwise we were closing.
But you never got a
No
renewal
one
contract.
questioned, no one offered us another contract at any price, and no one questioned. Then it was just stopped. Our contracts were fulfilled on the 30th of June, so that's why I was saying to Mr. Steves, we need to do something. These are Bridgeport students that have to be placed elsewhere unless the university still is going to stay in business. And that's where those dates came from. He was inquiring, he was going to buy the school, but he also had to see if Bridgeport was going to be willing to provide more than they were providing to us because we were functioning at a deficit. So that's what was going on in July. And nothing was addressed apparently.
Well, okay. 1 second. Go ahead.
So in theory, you contacted, yes, didn't hear back. You could have offered it to another school district, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this ends up being, and I get the point because it's been drilled in that this is, and I respect it, actually the cost of IEPs, that it's not cheap. It's far from cheap. I think that's one of the biggest things we need to start advocating from the state because we're not funded for it.
Exactly.
So I understand the discount rate, and plus the average cost of living has like tripled. So it's the cost and the change over the last 2 to 3 years, that makes complete sense to me. What I'm getting is that had no action been conducted by our interim and the deputy, we could have been, as a school district, out of luck had this communication not happened. And we could have been anywhere as high as, with another program, up to $75,000 per child for about 70 children.
I think it was looked at. They did their due diligence. Some of these kids may have just say, because I know you send a kid to ACES, you would have took all 40 of those kids to ACES. Plus, they would have to be in a car for an hour. You would have had to have PPTs for each and every one of them. So you may have said, all right, I'm going to send 10 of them to Norwalk, to High Roads, 6 of them to ACES, 5 here, and they would have to been accepted. Remember, these are not, I also have students that are medically fragile. There's no behaviors, but I have nurses in my buildings. That's different. You're talking about kids that when you read it, shot somebody, stabbed somebody, threatened a teacher, beat up a teacher, came to school. Has to be a specialized program to even accept those kids. I know that university school sometimes doesn't even accept some of those referrals because of they don't want to take the chance of that kid coming in. They had a student last year that committed murder and is now going to jail. So I get it, but that is at the lowest end, I believe. It's the lowest that I've ever done for any kid. And I've been doing this for 20 years now. 15 years ago, I might have been at 35, 40, but not anymore. That is at the low end of every contract, and I provided that to the superintendent. I just told you along with Fairfield did. And they prepaid 10 students at 75. And I went down 10 and then went down 10. This is right at the low amount of any student that I would ever take. Now, if the kid got thrown out of here, went to the school and beat up somebody, and they had to go to one of my other schools, they're going to 75. Or I don't take them, I just don't need it. I service over 350 clients, and they're not all Board of Ed. I have a $10 million contract every year from the Department of Developmental Service. And those are from 22 now. Those are 60 years old. I do this because I believe in Bridgeport kids. I don't abandon them. I have never thrown out a student from any of my schools that come from Bridgeport. Because that's what you got to make it work. So sometimes I'm the last straw. I get it. I don't say no to any kid. I've never not taken a kid. I've had special ed directors call me and say, John, can you pick them up tomorrow before I have a contract, before I have a PPT? Because that kid needs to be in school versus or I got a mom that says, I need him in school tomorrow. I can't wait 2 weeks for the PPT. And I've had John DiDonato. I've been doing this for 20-something years in Bridgeport. And I've never thrown out a Bridgeport kid. Special ed directors don't hear from parents when they come to me. I get it done. Some people know on this board how much I get it done. So it is what it is. That contract is what it is. And that's what it's going to take to make it work. You want to change it next year? You want to do something else next year? That's up to you. But for now, that's what it's going to take. But a lot, and there's only 2 that I've ever done like this, that it's the bulk. And I get it. Because usually, if I was doing this, I'd want them one by one. Because that one of those kids may be $110. That says flat, no matter what you say, no matter what they need, it's 55, and I have to provide, and I'll provide that service.
Ms. Beckett, I want to thank you for not giving up on Bridgeport kids, no matter when their condition And that's something that is truly meaningful and impactful to hear. Because in reality, some people may, and to hear that you won't, that's really assuring to me. As well as I just understand all the cost factors, and there are different implications from our deputy and interim with their conduct. I have no further questions. Our kids need the services, and I think that's not debatable.
Mr. Benahan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I said before, thank you. You already answered my question about what's going on, what happened with the contract and what happened. But I don't feel that we need to put a but, a why, a how, or we about what's special needs students. But is it the money? You know, we need to have, if I was me, I would sign the contract right now because you do an amazing job. We don't need to complain about how to help our special needs students. They deserve it. This summer, I will avoid have like a 3 suit for board, you know, to not get sued from, for board education, because I speak for the parents. I'm trying to help them. I'm trying to let them, this is your right. This is the person you have to contact. This is the person you have to email, and you was one of them, you helped one of my parents, and I very appreciate that. But we don't need to put like a stop when it's about the special needs student. We don't need to be complaining about that. But I'm agree 100% with the job for any contract had to come to the board. Any kind of contract, because I really find out some contract, the board didn't. Some of you, I text you earlier about some contract was canceled, and we was in shock and said, when it happened. So it's like they ignore us because we're here. We're board members. We're not board members that we like to work together with everyone. So I'm agreeing with Madam Chair with him to be sure, be clear for the record, only contract happened in Bridgeport Public School had to come to the board of education, and that's what we got committee to talk about it. But I'm agree, and we don't need to put no stop about contract. I agree to keep forward, but like I say, like Ms. Baptiste said, thank you for not give up. I will appreciate that everything you do for Bridgeport school students. No more question, no more comment, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I had a question. Ms. Siegel said that there's certain contracts that come before. This wasn't one of them that needed to come before the board. If you can explain that again, why you said that specific contracts did not have to make it to the board?
Yes, so I was referring to agreements for special education out-of-district placements. There are multiple providers, probably 30 to 50 or more, who are engaged by the special education department each year for out-of-district placements. As we have discussed at meetings in the past, the number of out-of-district placements has been declining, which is a positive development. Nevertheless, there are approximately 300 students who require out-of-district placements in order to address their individual needs. And to the best of my recollection, it was established many years ago with the board that those agreements would be managed internally through the special ed department, superintendent's office, and the finance office in order to expedite the processing. And the reason for the need for expedited action is that the services are mandated and must be provided within a reasonable period of time in accordance with the IDEA regulations.
So then my other part of the question is, so Mr. Estevez shared that this is a 2-part or 3-part whole contract in the sense that part of it is special ed, part of it is expulsion. How does that work with what comes before the board amongst the combination of a contract like this? How does that work?
Well, there are 2 separate agreements with the university school. One is the agreement for the special education seats, up to 40 seats. And the second agreement is for the expulsion program.
So the expulsion part of it will come before the board, not the special ed part of it? is what I'm trying to understand.
Well, the expulsion agreement is services students, obviously, who are expelled, who generally are general ed students, although there could be a special ed student who is expelled in accordance with the special ed regulations. That type of agreement would not require competitive bidding because we are able to use, based on past practice, what's known as a BEN number, which is assigned by city purchasing, to allow the Board of Education to process certain types of agreements for specific services. And this particular service, the expulsion program, is considered out-of-district tuition. So we're able to use the purchasing process for out-of-district tuition in order to process the agreement for the expulsion program. So competitive bidding is not required. We don't have to file qualified purchase forms. But if it's over $25,000, generally it would require Board of Ed approval.
Okay, so that's kind of like where, when Dr. Levy brought this to my attention, before even putting it on the agenda, it was making sure that it followed the proper chain of command of making it to the board, so that the board at least had an opportunity to view it, agree to it, disagree to it, whatever they wanted to do. But I don't think that happened. So I just want to make sure that if you're saying that the special education portion of it versus expulsion part of it required board approval, then the contract was not approved by the board. It was just signed. Is that correct?
Well, I can't comment on the internal process. I believe the superintendent can share the process that was used internally for reviewing and signing the agreement.
Okay, Dr. Levy.
You want?
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I was a week, I think, in Bridgeport when this issue was brought to my attention, and I was quite frankly appalled by the lack of customer service, the lack of respect, and the lack of dignity that was provided for this particular issue, and the lack of urgency that was given to this issue, considering how quickly it was brought to the attention of the district. And my goal was to ensure that there was no interruption of service, that faith was provided for our kids, and to ensure that I minimized any exposure to the board and to the district for a failure to provide services to our most vulnerable, oftentimes critically ill OHI students who are the ones who use the university schools, in addition to those students who are expelled. And when those students are expelled, it's urgent. We have to find a placement for them. Oftentimes it is not safe to simply leave them static in a home setting for long periods of time. You have issues like suicide ideation. You have a lot of different issues that the students are going through along with their families. And oftentimes the students struggle because the home setting is not the most stable setting as well. And so my years of experience working with special education, serving on many committees, addressing special ed complaints at the state level, this was something that I wanted to address very quickly and very urgently and expediently with Mr. Esteves and with the university school. One thing that I want to make clear, when you have students who have these types of behavioral issues, transporting them for long periods of time is a really bad idea. You want to make sure that you can have a local provider if possible, because when you're transporting these types of students, you have to have additional adults to secure their safety and that of the individuals who are actually driving. So it's not as simple as we're going to put them in a van and send them to another facility. There are other types of staffing, other types of restraints that may be necessary in transporting these kids. And so we want to make sure that we are making decisions that are not just expedient, but also ensure the safety of our employees, ensure the safety of the families, and ensure the safety of the students. And so for me, this matter was urgent. I felt this was very urgent, and that's why I called you that night, because to me, this rose to the level of alarm, critical, must be addressed right now. We cannot move forward and start the school year. This could not wait for us to create a special session for the board to meet. This needed to be addressed immediately to ensure that we had the resources to serve kids. The idea of going out to find a provider this late in the game, that's something that we take 6 months to a year to do while we're vetting different providers, while we're looking to see what services they provide, we're checking their references. There's just a lot that has to go through. I met with Ms. Johnson, I met with Ms. Baldwin, and I spoke about this entire ordeal and the background before making this decision and before meeting with Mr. Esteves. And once I met with him and I was able to see and speak to some of the superintendents that I've worked with them, I was convinced that this was the right way to go. And this is why you trust me to do this job. This is my area of expertise. This is what I do very, very well. And my job is to ensure that I can mitigate any vulnerabilities to the district and to the board in making these decisions. Is it always going to be something that the board is happy with me about? No. But I think the opposite, starting the school year and not having a provider for these specific students would be catastrophic for our district.
And just to share to that, I'm not just saying that this isn't a good thing, not at all by any means. I just want to make sure that those board members or us as a board had an opportunity, because you did bring it to my attention, but there was a moment in which we need to figure out what next steps were, and to follow the process was bring it before the committee or bring it before the full board to pursue any questions or concerns that they may have. So that's, for anyone that's listening, that's the clarification that I'm trying to make, that the board haven't had an opportunity to review this prior to any decisions being made, even in the midst of the urgency. So that was what my point of the matter was. Mr. Traber?
Yeah, I guess I want to go back now. What we have had presented to us tonight is a signed agreement for the expulsion, which Ms. Siegel has just recognized is not the same thing as the out of district placements. As Mr. Esteves pointed out, we fought with Mr. Vallis a long time ago where he tried to remove and bring all the out of district placements back into this. And I remember sitting in the back of the room during those hearings. Yes, we were there with the students from the university school who, I remember sitting with one, he was covered with tattoos and he had a baby in his arm, talking about how the university school saved his life. I know how good the program is. I know what it's done for children in Bridgeport, and they were as an effort to get rid of it, to completely kill the school. And thank God it didn't succeed. So I recognize there's no questioning the value of what this program has done for the children in Bridgeport and continues to do for the children in Bridgeport. And what I hear is we had a horrible confluence this summer of the demise of the owner of the program and the demise of the direction, the people in charge of our district. And we came close to losing this valuable asset. And in the midst of that, we had a protocol that we've been trying to establish to make sure that shaky contracts aren't being signed behind the board's back, which is an unfortunate history in this community. So you come in and you get stuck with a contract needing to be signed that the board hasn't had a chance to hear about. And that's sort of what we're looking at tonight. There's no question about the value of this program and the importance of this program. And we're not disagreeing with you about that. I don't hear that from anybody. But the fact that it's a dramatic increase for the reasons Mr. Esteves is pointing out, and I'm sorry, I did not catch.
Zone, yeah.
And pointing out that this, so it happened. But we need to be able to move quickly to, you know, when you have this urgency, we can't just say, okay, well, you can go ahead and sign this huge increase. There has been an agreement that any contract over a certain amount needs board approval. And so there has to be some way for us to address this in our policies to say, in an urgent situation, the following can be done to deal with a situation like this that may hopefully never come up again in this kind of unfortunate situation where we have a new superintendent come on duty as others are leaving and one of the programs is collapsing. I can't imagine that sort of scenario coming up like that again, but that's really where we're at here tonight. So we've established that this should have gone before the board. We have a contract before the board that the board needs to have reviewed that is now on the agenda here. And we have a program that Mr. Esteves has explained how we got to this point. So the question is, where do we go from here? And I guess the first question I want to know is, I never have quite understood the numbers. Last year, we paid how much for the expulsion contract?
$235,000.
Okay. And this year, we're going to pay $450,000.
Correct.
Okay. And so that's the 90-some% that you were talking about. And I understand the reasons why you articulated, Mr. Esteves, the dramatic increase. And so we're being asked to approve that dramatic increase.
It's already, well, it's
I
signed
know the
already.
contract's been signed, but I guess we're going to retroactively approve less this increase essentially tonight.
It's a good point. Yes. Yeah, point of
Point of
information.
information.
Point of
Mr. Scowlick.
information,
I'll accept that.
Committee level can't approve it. It's-
I understand. We recommend approval. Yes, sir. Yes.
It's about-
I would say.
Okay.
Yes. Well, I'm not done either.
Okay.
So you were making a point. So I'm saying that's all we would do tonight is we would recommend until our next board meeting, the formal approval of this agreement.
Yes. Mrs. Sakala.
Yes, just to make the record clear, because we've mentioned prior employees in regards to this contract. They have stated that you didn't bring it to us 3 months before because the university school was closing. Was potentially closing. Right. Was the board informed of this potential closure so we can make alternate arrangements for our students?
No, what happened was we didn't intend to close, we were hoping to stay open. The gentleman who owns it became critically ill and he was underwriting it. So I approached Mr. Stevenson. We had a contract through June only. He said he was very interested in buying it. Should we have let the board know in advance? Probably, we assumed he was buying it.
So now to further clarify, our current employees, I think somebody mentioned it, reprehensible disgusting behavior in regards to this contract. The first time we were approached to review this contract was about 41 to 45 days ago. And
We had a contract through the 30th of June.
right, and those employees, knowing that this board wanted to see all contracts, they'd be hesitant to immediately sign this contract and to maybe go through the proper channels, which is the board, which is still could be done today, as we're evidencing today. It's likely going to pass the board because there's no issue with the program. The program we think is good. It seems to be the consensus of the board. So we can still have a meeting and approve it before the new school year where any student gets expelled. So at no time did our former employees risk having students not get services. This was pressure that was felt needlessly because obviously today, I'm assuming it's going to pass the committee. I assume at our first regular board meeting, it will be approved by the full board with no interruptions to services, which could have potentially been done by our prior staff as well. So. To try. Right. To try. Right. This is the process. This is the process you're sitting here now, except unfortunately, we've got a contract that has already been signed, which is, I believe, probably enforceable. Right. So now, if the board did not like this contract, say the program was, saying what it is, but if the program was horrible, we would be bound by this contract that we did not look at. And that's my main concern here. And I believe that's what the prior staff wanted to bring before us in a proper manner, because we do not rush. And I hope the whole board agrees with me that we should not make a decision on a $450,000 contract that's presented in less than 41 days away. That's just board process, nothing to do with programming.
But this program has been in place for 10 years. Has it ever come in front of the board?
Yes. You've spoken before the board before, haven't you?
Oh, yes, that program. They went out for bid.
Yeah.
I never spoke to the board for the special ed program.
Right,
No.
that's the explosion program.
There's no other program, they put it out for bid.
Yes.
Ms. Baptiste Perez.
The agenda states discussion and presentation concerning the Universal School IEP proposed contract for education/expulsion. There's no action listed, and we would be in violation of FOIA if the committee today takes action.
And we can always bring it back to committee to,
You would have to.
yeah,
Point of
so,
information,
yes.
you as chair could add any agenda item you'd like to.
A regular board meeting. Thank you.
Correct. So I still can get approved. That's-
August 28th.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this? Going once, any further discussion? Any further discussion? Thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate you both for coming out and sharing about your program. Thank you to the staff that participated this evening. At this moment, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, no.
Mr. Manahan, you don't have that right.
Moved by Mr. Traver.
Sorry, Mr.
Second.
Traver.
All in favor?
Soon.
All in favor? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Very nice. Yes, you're right. Thank you again.
Thank you.